You picked up your phone a few minutes ago. There was no notification. No buzz, no banner, no reason at all. You unlocked it, looked at the screen for half a second and put it back down. Most people call this a bad habit. The real answer is far stranger. That tiny, reasonless reach is not a modern habit at all. It is a 2 million-year-old survival behavior, firing inside a brain that has no idea it is holding a phone instead of a spear. Start there. Your hand moves before your mind decides anything. That is the part that should bother you. A habit you chose would feel like a choice. This does not feel like a choice. It feels like an itch, and itches are not decisions. They are reflexes, built by evolution to keep you alive. So what is actually happening in the half-second before you unlock the screen? To find the answer, you have to go back further than smartphones, further than electricity, further than agriculture. You have to go back to a small group of early humans on the African savanna, roughly 2 million years ago, with no calendar and no certainty about where the next meal was coming from. Their brains were not built to feel satisfied. They were built to feel curious. Curiosity, not comfort, was what kept them alive. Here is why. An early human who felt content and stopped scanning the horizon was an early human who missed the fruiting tree 2 valleys over, or the herd that wandered into range, or the rival group moving in from the east. Survival did not reward satisfaction. It rewarded restlessness. The brain that kept checking, kept scanning, kept sniffing out new information about its environment, outcompeted the brain that sat still and felt at peace. Think about what that actually required, day to day. Every horizon had to be read for danger. Every rustle in the grass had to be evaluated in a fraction of a second, predator or wind, threat or nothing. Every patch of unfamiliar territory had to be weighed against the risk of going hungry where you were. None of that worked if the brain felt finished. It only worked if the brain stayed slightly unsatisfied, always reaching for the next piece of information, just in case the next piece of information was the one that mattered. This is where dopamine comes in, and almost everyone gets dopamine wrong. You have probably heard it described as the brain's pleasure chemical. It is not. In the 1990s, a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz ran a series of experiments recording the activity of dopamine neurons in monkeys while they waited for rewards. What he found reshaped the field. Dopamine did not spike when the monkeys received a reward they expected. It spiked when the reward was uncertain, or arrived earlier than predicted, or did not match what the monkey thought would happen. Dopamine is not a pleasure signal. It is a prediction error signal. It fires hardest in the space between not knowing and finding out. Read that again, because it explains almost everything about your phone. Dopamine is not what you feel when something good happens. It is what you feel in the gap right before you find out whether something good happened. And that gap is exactly what a locked phone screen creates, dozens of times a day, for free. Now layer in a second piece of research, one most people have heard of without realizing how directly it applies to them. In the mid-20th century, the psychologist B.F. Skinner ran thousands of trials on operant conditioning, training animals to respond to different patterns of reward. He discovered something almost unsettling. Animals rewarded every single time they performed an action eventually grew bored and stopped. But animals rewarded unpredictably, sometimes after one try, sometimes after 20, kept responding longer, harder, and more compulsively. Skinner called this a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. It is the exact mechanism behind a slot machine. It is also the exact mechanism behind a pull-to-refresh feed that sometimes shows you something fascinating, sometimes shows you nothing at all, and never tells you which one is coming. Your ancestors lived inside a variable ratio schedule without anyone designing it. The savanna was unpredictable by nature. Some days of scanning produced nothing. Some days produced a discovery that kept the group alive for a week. There was no way to know in advance which kind of day it would be, so the brain learned never to stop checking. The brain that evolved inside that uncertainty is the same brain unlocking your phone right now, expecting nothing, hoping anyway. So is this a flaw? Did evolution simply get something wrong? No, this is the counterintuitive part, and it changes the entire story. This was never a flaw. For nearly the entire span of human existence, information was scarce, slow, and expensive to gather. Finding out what was over the next hill took hours of walking. Finding out whether a fruit tree had ripened took days of waiting. Finding out whether a rival group was approaching could take a scout an entire afternoon. The brain's hunger for new information was perfectly matched to a world where new information was rare, slow, and valuable. The system was never broken. The world it was built for simply stopped existing. Your world now produces more new information in a single minute than your ancestors' world produced in a year. Every scroll offers a new fact, a new face, a new piece of outrage, a new joke, a new tiny dose of uncertainty resolved. The ancient circuit built to make you curious about a mostly empty, mostly silent world has been dropped into a world that never stops talking. Nothing in your biology changed, everything around it did. And the people who design the apps on your phone know this, whether or not they have ever read a single page of evolutionary biology. They do not need to understand why a variable ratio schedule works. They only need to notice that it does. A feed that refreshes with something new every single time teaches your brain to expect it, and boredom sets in fast. A feed that refreshes with something new only sometimes, unpredictably, keeps that ancient circuit leaning forward indefinitely, the same way an unpredictable savanna once did. You are not imagining that certain apps feel harder to put down than others. Some of them really have been shaped, deliberately, around the oldest reward system in your brain. This is where a more recent voice in the research becomes useful. The cognitive psychologist Daniel Levitin has spent years studying what constant information checking does to attention. His research describes something he calls a switching cost. Every time your focus jumps from a task to a notification and back again, it is not free. Your brain does not resume exactly where it left off. It pays a small tax in attention and time, over and over, dozens of times an hour, without you ever noticing the toll adding up across a day. The checking does not just interrupt your time. It quietly reshapes how long you can hold a single thought before some ancient part of you insists on scanning the horizon again. Here is the part that should genuinely surprise you. You are not weak-willed for reaching for your phone. You are running software that is several million years old, executing exactly as designed, inside an environment it was never built for. Blaming yourself for checking your phone is a little like blaming a smoke detector for going off in a kitchen that always smells faintly like smoke. The detector is not broken. The environment never stops triggering it. Think about your own day for a moment. How many times have you unlocked your phone already? Not because you needed to. Because some quiet, ancient part of your brain whispered that something might have changed since the last time you checked, and the only way to know was to look. Maybe you have even felt your phone buzz in your pocket when it was not actually buzzing at all, a sensation so common it has its own name, phantom vibration. That is not a glitch in your nervous system. That is how primed the checking circuit has become, ready to respond to a signal before the signal has even arrived. That whisper is not new. It is the same whisper that once meant the difference between finding food and going hungry, between spotting danger early and not spotting it at all. Notice where it shows up. At a red light, in a waiting room, in the 3 idle seconds at the end of an escalator ride, in bed, in the dark, after you already told yourself you were done for the night. None of those moments require new information. Your ancient circuit does not know that. It only knows that stillness once meant danger, and it has never been updated to recognize that a red light is not a silent savanna. What is different now is that the whisper never has to wait. There is no walk to the next valley, no days of scanning an empty horizon, no scouts sent out at dawn who might not return until dusk. There is only a glowing rectangle in your pocket that can answer the whisper in under a second, every time, recreating the spike of uncertainty, resolved without ever requiring real uncertainty or real stakes. You are foraging. You have simply never thought of it that way, because the landscape you are foraging through is built from notifications instead of trees. None of this means the answer is to throw the phone in a drawer and white-knuckle your way through the day. Willpower was never the right tool for an instinct this old. You cannot outdiscipline 2 million years of evolution any more than you can talk yourself out of flinching at a loud noise. What actually changes things is smaller and stranger than discipline. It is simply knowing what is happening in the half-second before you reach. The urge still arrives. It just stops feeling like a mystery. And a craving you can name is a craving you can finally watch instead of obey. So the next time your hand drifts toward your phone for no reason at all, you do not have to feel embarrassed by it. You can recognize it for what it actually is. It is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you lack discipline. It is ancient survival machinery, inherited from people who never saw a screen, still running the only program it has ever known. Scan, predict, check, repeat. You picked up your phone a few minutes ago for no reason at all. Now you know there was never such a thing as no reason. There was only a 2 million-year-old hand, reaching for the horizon and finding a screen instead.